what we'll do today is that, I'll introduce have an introduction on the subject, how basically I'll compare or touch upon how oligonucleotides are different in their mechanism of action. And then we will go on to the different types of oligonucleotides. And we'll have a detailed comparison of oligos with other modalities, essentially the small molecules as well as the large molecules, and how they are different, what are advantages, and there are some disadvantages as well. We will touch upon that also. Then technologies that helping oligonucleotides to overcome some of the challenges such challenges of this space to become a path-breaking or a blockbuster therapeutic agent. There are certain limitations we need to overcome that we will talk on that. And then the clinical pipeline as such, it's a very broad overview, and not the individual company's clinical pipeline, but in general, how many of them are in different phases, and a glimpse of the marketed drugs. And as we speak, I think late last month, a new oligo-based drug has been approved. Maybe all of you maybe. So then towards the end of this presentation, would like to spend some time on how Origene can help you to set up this or internalize this capability, as well as to accelerate the discovery programs in this space. That's what I would like to do today. With that, let us straight get into the topic. So first of all, with so many small molecules based drugs around, why do we need alternatives to small molecules? Because they are so handy, they are so, wide application. So that is the first question I would like to ask and, find some answers. So if you look at for a small molecule to become a drug or a medicine, there are certain criteria to be fulfilled. I mean, they largely rely on the druggability of the target. Essentially, what happens is that when a small molecule binds to a protein, essentially there is a hydrophobic pocket. To that, the small molecule get docked, and then it gets bind. Basically, dock it and bind it. So deeper the pockets, it is stronger the binding, and it becomes more. The small molecule has the higher potential to become a drug. So if you look at one of the important criteria is for a target to have a hydrophobic pocket to accept a small molecule. But we can imagine that this may not be the case everywhere. So what I understood is that there are about 20,000 different proteins in a human body which can be considered as a target, or which has which can be eventually become targets through different modalities. Out of that, about only 15% or so, maybe 15 to 20% or so, are having these hydrophobic pockets, which has the potential to be a target for a small molecule, small molecule drug. And if we look at the commercial, or the marketed small molecule drugs, out of that, hardly about 20 or max 22% are exploited for commercial application or marketed drugs. So that means there is a great scope in looking for targets which are outside the realm of small molecule, druggable by small molecule. So you can see that a number of targets are out there which are not addressed by the small molecule. That's why researchers across the globe are looking increasingly into modalities outside small molecules. For example, the large molecules, to name monoclonal antibodies and the protein degraders, PROTACs, or the oligonucleotide space. So that's one of the reasons why the alternate modalities are getting importance, or they are being looked at as promising modalities. And needless to say that new diseases may crop up anytime, and they may demand a very different challenge or to address. And the COVID situation has actually is a wake-up call for all of us to look broader modality or multiple modalities to tackle new diseases. That's the background. So what I'm trying to say is that the alternate modalities like large molecules or oligonucleotides, they offer something different or something very differently to the small molecules. In fact, the oligonucleotides actually do not target the protein after the gene expression per se. So they can in fact target the gene expression itself. I'll explain it to you in the forthcoming slides. So essentially that offers an opportunity to overcome the druggability issue of small molecules. The large molecules still, target the proteins after the gene expression. So let me go to the next slide. So yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that hence the new and the existing diseases need novel therapeutic agents. So if you look at some of these novel therapeutic agents, I would like to draw your attention to the picture onto your right. So if you look at either it's a small molecule or a large molecule, you can see that on the right top corner there, disease is there, which is, if you look at either, a small or large molecule that try to inhibit the disease-causing protein or act as an antagonist, right? So then, but that is after the transcription and the translation of the disease-causing protein. But if you look at the same time, the down, where how a typical antisense oligonucleotide which can add which works, or the mechanism of action is that it actually works on the mRNA during the transcription and the translation stage, and the disease causing protein itself is not going to be there, or it inhibits there. So the mechanism of action is slightly different here, and not depend on the properties of the expressed or gene expression itself, or the protein to be docked or binding. So that's what is the difference I was explaining in the first slide. So what I feel is that the therapeutic oligonucleotides are one such category of modality which can be a game changer in the days to come. And we have seen that over the years how if you look at the clinical pipeline or the commercial drugs in the market, how from the small molecules it is moving towards the large molecules, that we are all aware that increasingly most of these globally managed discovery companies, their pipeline is getting richer in the large molecules. So a similar change may happen in the future towards oligonucleotides as well. That's why I think it has the potential to be a game changer. But there are certain major challenges or disadvantages as well, which we will see in the later slides. Okay, if you look at the therapeutic types, so there are different therapeutic types, and one of the important types is the small interfering RNAs or the siRNAs. They are essentially, a silencing RNA, or the RNA interference, RNAi, is actually a natural process present in most of the eukaryotic cells. They are typically double-stranded RNA molecules, and they work on the silencing the post-transcriptional expression of specific genes. So this is as I mentioned, one of the most important oligonucleotides. And in today's discussion, a majority of the discussions will be around this siRNA. That's why I picked it up in the first. So another one is the antisense oligonucleotides, or ASOs. They are short, typically a 20 base units or a 20 mer, and single stranded compared to the siRNA, and these are DNA based. This actually acts in the inhibition of protein translation, or it inhibits the protein translation, binding the target mRNA, and that's how it manipulates or it inhibits the target protein. So it can have a sequence specific action as well. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so the next one is aptamers. Aptamers are synthetic and single-stranded DNA, or it can be RNA as well. And these are selected for, this binds to a specific target by an iterative process called SELEX. SELEC stands for the long form or the expansion of SELEC is a systematic evolution of ligands by exponential enrichment. And this can be used for both therapeutic as well as diagnostic. So it has the application in the both the spaces. So miRNAs or micro RNAs are small non-coding RNAs. They are also, the 20 mer in length, and it also regulates the gene expression and works in the post-transcriptional stage by degrading the target mRNA, slightly different compared to the other type, and again works works or inhibit the translation. So the next important category is the locked nucleic acid or LNA. It's again a chemical modification or a modified RNA nucleotide. So where the ribose moiety is having an extra bridge connecting the 2' oxygen and the 4' carbon. So these are all some of the techniques or the methods to enhance the stability and the delivery of, or in general increase the bioavailability of the oligonucleotides. There talk on that aspect a little later on, how the technology is helping on the enhancing the delivery or improving the bioavailability of these class of compounds. So this is an important aspect. I thought we should spend some time on comparing the oligonucleotides with other modalities. If we look at the route of administration or the delivery mechanism, how it gets into the body and then act on the targeted tissues or the cells. If you look at the small molecules, there are wide options, including oral administration. I mean, not there are parenterals, but the oral administration, oral solids, suspension, all kinds of possibilities are there in the small molecules. Wide options available, but at the same time, if you look at the large molecules, mostly they are IV. And similarly, the oligonucleotides also, when it comes to the delivery mechanism or the route of administration, there are limitations there. So far, I think the maximum effect has been found in the local delivery when it is delivered to eye or spinal cord or liver. So if I talk about the delivery challenges, delivery to extra hepatic cells continues to be one of the biggest translational challenge in this space. How to get into a target organ or get into a group of cells which are outside the liver is essentially a major challenge here. So there are people have tried the local delivery where the naked DNA, naked RNA has been injected to different target organs, for example, to the spinal cord or the eye with some successes. Yeah. So as I mentioned, that continues to be a very, very, very difficult challenge to tackle. And another important aspect is the cost of goods. The small molecules, as we know, being a synthetic approach or a chemically synthesized moiety, their the raw material cost as well as the processing cost, all those things are favorable. And when it comes to large molecules, there are, again, the process is complex or complicated and expensive compared to the small molecules. And when it comes to the oligonucleotides, what I feel is that, or if you look at the process carefully, the synthesis part is like small molecules, where the synthesis happens, and then the deprotection or cleavage, and then the further step purification, then finally annealing to the desalting and annealing to the double-stranded RNA for a siRNA. So the synthesis part is essentially very similar to a small molecule, while the purification and the rest of the process, essentially the downstream process, is very similar to a large molecule. That brings in complexity. I mean, someone who is really good at chemistry or good at the small molecule synthesis and really good at the downstream processing of large molecules will be in a better position to internalize this technique, or will be able to master this art better. And hence, it's a complicated process. There are very, very stringent requirement to handle these molecules, the finished products, to ensure that it has the right or it does not have the bioburden or endotoxins. All those things are really complicated, and hence it's expensive. Even today, if you look at even the marketed oligonucleotides, some of them are really, really expensive. Unless this process becomes more, scaled up or more in a commercial sense, it has to be the economies of scale has to come in picture. Even if I look at the process, there are only very few or limited manufacturers for the equipment with the high lead time. There are, in short, sum and substance, there are challenges associated with the manufacturing, and hence the cost of goods are also high. Some of the amidates are, or phosphoramidates, the input material or the raw material are really, really expensive. And some of the other aspects we need to keep in mind is that large molecules have a complex pharmacology. And if we look at the oligonucleotides, they are large hydrophilic polyanions. That is the precise reason why it is difficult to get them into the cells, or how to cross the cell membrane and get it into the cell for act. That's one of the reasons. So if but on the other aspects of oligonucleotides, or essentially on the advantages on a discovery point of view, if you look at a rapid screening and to get to a lead compound is faster than compared to a small molecule, where it's a very iterative process and very elaborate medchem effort is required to get to that stage of an LO, a lead optimization. But in this case, if you look at, just by the knowledge of the primary sequence of the gene alone, by rapid screening, we'll be able to get to a specific lead compounds. That's one, on a discovery point of view, it is that's an advantage. And another aspects we need to understand is on the precision and personalized medicines area, this space or this modality offers very specific advantage. And I already mentioned about the smaller molecules, their hydrophobic pocket requirement, and all that aspects I have already mentioned. So let's go on to the next slide. The development hurdle, or what is actually holding back many of these molecules into the market. So some of them I have already explained, so I'm not planning to touch upon. Just to reiterate or re-emphasize that the delivery challenges or increase, that is one of the largest, especially to get outside the liver cells, or the activity outside the liver, extra hepatic cells. So they are negatively charged molecules and very high plasma protein binding, and that's the reason not orally bioavailable as well. So another delivery challenge. Okay. So the cost aspect I have already explained about how the complicated the process, and some of the requirements for the handling. So just to touch upon the purity and the handling requirements. On the purity point of view, unless we get a very high crude purity with a high pure ingredients or high pure input material, the finished product is not going to have a high purity. And over and above, the controlling the bioburden or the endotoxins poses another biggest challenges. And we also need to remember that most of these are IV, or some of them are intrathecal. I mean, directly to the cerebrospinal fluid. So you can imagine the level of bioburden we can have or the specific requirement to get it to a very high or very low level of bioburden or bioburden free status. So that's the importance there. And okay, so I think I have touched upon enough on the delivery challenges. Let me see, is there anything else which I need to specifically call upon? Okay, so there are different methods to increase the bioavailability or enhance or support the delivery challenges. The local administration, we already have seen that the naked RNA is directly injected to the target organ, and another important aspect is chemical modification, whether it is the phosphate backbone or the ribose. So in the LNA locked the nucleic acid, we have seen that how the ribose backbone can be modified to increase the delivery. But I think perhaps the most important area or most important aspect, or where the maximum research is going on, is the conjugation, where it could be a GalNAc conjugation or an antibody, aptamers, peptide, lipids, or lipid nanoparticles in short form, or polymers, cationic polymers. These are some of the various conjugation or conjugation technology researchers have explored. So let me take you through some of the aspects of these uh, conjugation technology. Probably GalNAc is the most important, conjugation, while others are also gaining importance, like LNP, as the peptide conjugation. They're all gaining importance. But if you look at N-acetyl galactosamine, GalNAc, it's an important, conjugate or conjugation method, where it can binds to the acylglycoprotein receptor. It's essentially a breakthrough approach, and there is one approved drug in the market, and multiple candidates. So there are several of them are in the late phase, as well as in the early stage as well. So as I mentioned, this continues to be an important or a very promising method to increase the or address the delivery challenges. So this PMO, or phosphorodiamidate morpholino oligomer, this is also again a chemical modification, where the backbone is modified, and the DNA bases are attached to a backbone of methylene morpholin rings linked through a phosphoramidate groups. There are two approved drugs on following this technique. Let's see some more, technologies which are helping researchers. The peptide nucleic acid is another technique, where a pseudo peptide polymer backbone substitute the traditional backbone of a DNA or an RNA. This is another cccDNA or tricyclo-DNA, where the ethylene bridge, you can see that there is a ring formed between the C3 and C5. This another a technique to help the delivery. So lipid conjugates, there are a lot of research happening in this area, where chemically it's oligonucleotide is chemically conjugated to a hydrophobic moiety to increase the hydrophobicity of the oligonucleotide is a polyanion, where that's what it makes difficult to enter the cell. So this is the hydrophobic moiety helps the molecule to pass through the cell membrane. So some of the moieties tried are cholesterol, squalene, fatty acids. So other areas, I don't think it. Some of the important areas are cationic polymers. This is another area where researchers are trying to cover the delivery. If I look at the clinical trials going on across the globe in this space, you can see that there is a very good number of clinical trials going on. This is a little dated information, but for today's discussion, we can we can focus on this. So you can see, just to tell you that qualitatively, there are a number of trials going on in this space. And when it comes to the approval status, if you look at, there are very important, or some of these approvals have actually changed the entire paradigm, or brought a paradigm shift. That is, one of that is Onpattro or Patisiran. After that, there is a lot of traction in the market. There were a lot of organizations looking for an approval in this space, looks to me. And once they saw that an approval is happening, a significant amount of interest in this area, more so in the the conjugate, whether it is lipid, GalNAc, or any of those conjugation techniques. So you can see that late last month, about a few weeks ago, Oxalium has also approved, and there are a number of oligos at different phases of preclinical studies. This area or space is gaining importance, and I think it is going to be more in the days to come, the way the research is being advanced. So our scientists can quickly identify quickly screen different compounds, and identify or help you to lead optimize or optimize the lead. We have significant experience or expertise in this space, have been doing it for almost 20 years or so for small molecules. We would like to extend that to the oligonucleotide space as well, where we also have a good CAD internal or in-house CAD support as well. So we decided to invest in that space and start a discovery facility, and eventually to go all the way up to the development as well as manufacturing scale. So it is not only in the chemistry area. You can see that be it the biology screening, or the in vitro biology high throughput screening, or the ADME PKPD, or any of those biological assays, we will be able to do that. So when we get a molecule, be it a small molecule or going forward in the oligonucleotide, we will be able to provide the entire service under one roof. That's what we are trying to do. And that too, when it is given, the service is provided across modalities, we believe that our customers will find a value in it. So as I mentioned, we are rapidly positioning ourselves as an end-to-end integrated discovery, development, and manufacturing organization across multiple therapeutic modalities. So look at our plan. So we will be starting with a discovery scale or a small scale facility, where we will be setting up a small synthesizer, and this facility will be up and running by March 2020. And we will be able to handle the typical siRNA or anything in the 20 mer, 22 mer, all those things we will be able to handle. And in this stage, we are expecting, or we are planning, synthesis in the milligram scale. So where we will be able to rapidly screen a number of compounds, be it a library, or be it your lead molecules. We will be able to synthesize that quickly. And internally, we are setting up the team and internalizing this skill set as well, where the analytics has a lot of role to play. Essentially, it is in the understanding the impurity formation, or even the pathway, reaction pathway. If something goes wrong, analytics, the LC mass or the HPLC analysis will throw a lot of light into what is exactly happening in the synthesizer. So we are analytical expertise in this space in order to provide that the analytical insights to our synthesis team. So as I mentioned, the plan is to start the discovery scale operation, but that does not mean that we don't have plans to go further. We wanted to start there, and eventually have plans to move into the early phase development, essentially then the late phase development and the commercial scale. So it may take a few years to get there, but that's what we are trying to do. So if you look at the various equipment for each of these scales, they are what you can see is that the scale is not only the scale, it is essentially the way we handle the molecule, or how we handle is very, 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 very important. Otherwise, especially in the late phase, to meet the purity or the impurity levels, and the bioburden is going to be extremely difficult. So, but we have team members who understands this very well, and has hands-on experience in handling oligonucleotides at various skills. And with that, we believe we will be able to provide a differentiated experience to our customers in across the space, or across the development stage. I mean, next couple of years, where we will be able to give this service, I mean, the discovery scale synthesis support, including the biology, by mid of next calendar year. So though the facility will be ready by March, we will take an additional couple of months to do some in-house programs, and then we will be ready to take the customers' projects. So that's on the facility setup. And so if you look at what we have discussed in the last 40 minutes or so, the oligonucleotides as a modality has a breakthrough modality, but there are certain very clear challenges, especially as well as the increasing the PK, you know, the of the I mean the bioavailability of the molecule. So one of the things which I forgot to mention is that inside the body, these oligonucleotides do not have very high stability. The problem there is the RNA is, I mean, it degrades through RNAs, and the renal clearance is one of the challenges. So those are, if the research is, I mean, if we are able to tackle or resolve those challenges, essentially the stability, the you know, the cell membrane penetration, and the bioavailability, then this has the potential to become a breakthrough modality. And it works in a very different pathway compared to other modalities. We have seen that, and there is very little or no dependence on the druggability of targets, because it works in a very different mechanism of action. So significant research is going on to enhance the delivery challenges, especially in the conjugates, and you know, how to improve the you know, cell penetration. So Origin is building the capability in the discovery area, and in another 6 or 7 months time, we will be fully ready to take up discovery projects. And we have significant experience handling the small molecules, which we believe will be able to translate to this space as well, by you know, developing or setting up these skill sets and capability. So the last statement. So we believe we can be your right partner for your oligonucleotides discovery programs. So let me also acknowledge my colleague for helping me to prepare this slide.
Thanks, Dr. Jagadish, for the wonderful insights. I hope the session was helpful for our audience today. So without any further ado, we'll start taking questions from the audience. Feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A or through the chat. And as I could see that we have got a couple of questions from the audience so far. I'll just read out the first question, which has come from Mr. Rosenbaum. How can oligonucleotide-based drug delivery and toxicology issue be addressed at discovery stage? That's part one of the question. Being in India, how will you manage to get talent? That's the second part.
Okay. Okay. So I will talk about the delivery challenges, as well as the the talent part. So on the delivery challenges, if you look at some of the chemical modifications are aimed towards that, whether it is a backbone modification or if it is a conjugation. These are all targeted towards the delivery challenges, which is very well applicable even at the discovery stage as such. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that there are different technologies which I touched upon are helping the discovery of medicines or drugs based on this platform or this modality. So that's on the discovery part, and on the talent build in this part of the world, how we are developing the talent. It's a very good question, and thanks for asking this. This is a fantastic question. So in India, if you look at traditionally, we do not have many oligonucleotide research professionals within India. So what we are doing, or we have been doing, is that identify the researchers in Western world, and there are researchers who would like to relocate to India, or expats who would like to come back to India. We identify them, either postdocs or experienced scientists, and bring onboard them, and with their help train our scientists. And another interesting aspect we are doing is that we also have consultants who have very, very high level of experience or expertise in this space, who are helping us to internalize this this know-how or this technology. It is true that it is not very easy to internalize this technology. So there are multiple strategies being followed, and talent developments leveraging the Western talents is one of the ways. I hope I have answered the question.
Thanks, Dr. Jagdish. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Rosenbaum. So I'll move on to the next question from Mr. Deepak Kalita. What are the capabilities APS have on oligosynthesis as well as purification?
Okay. Again, good question. So as I mentioned in one of the slides, where today we are planning to set up the synthesis as well as the purification on the discovery scale. So if you look at the typical oligosynthesis process, or how the synthesis methodology looks like, is that essentially it is a synthesis, an iterative process through a synthesizer, and then cleavage and deprotection, and then purification, desalting, and lyophilization. We can do all those. I mean, the purification, including synthesis, any of these steps we'll be able to do it. We are setting up the equipment to support that.
Excellent. So we have another set of questions from Mr. Deepak. Before taking those questions, I'll go back to the chat. We have a question from Dr. Ramana Rao. Is there any breakthrough in the integrated drug discovery program with Origin?
With the Origin, right?
Origin, yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not in the oligonucleotide space, but in the small molecule space, there are cases. There are examples where it went all the way from the early discovery to the market as well. So there are, and we have been doing it for some time, and it continues to be a very important area where we can provide cutting edge support to our partners.
All right, I hope that answers your question, Dr. Rao. So moving ahead, we have another question from Mr. Deepak. How you qualify your KSM phosphoramidites, phosphoramidites? I believe that's the right way to spell it. And what are the control mechanism on critical and non-critical impurities?
Yes. So the quality of the input material is, thanks again for asking this question. The quality of the input material is very, very, very critical. There are very well-known phosphoramidite manufacturers across the world. There are companies who are specializing on modified amidites. So, there are, the modified amidites are very, very critical for therapeutic application as well. So the purity is very, very important. Apart from the purity, I would say that the moisture content of the input material and the handling of the reagents are extremely important. So if you just open a bottle of a reagent, be it a phosphoramidate or the tritylation agent or an amine, if you open and use it for a couple of times, you will see in your chromatogram the purity is declining after run. So my or our observation is that purity is extremely important, but the moisture content is even more important, and hence the handling of these. Where do you do actually the experiments? In what kind of environment you do the experiment is extremely important. So for the purity, we have the traditional, the analytical techniques, HPLC, NMR. These all these techniques can be used to ascertain the purity of the material. But these days, the manufacturers or the suppliers will be able to supply amidites with very good purity. But the problem is not on the purity, as I mentioned, it's on the control, environmental controls. That's where the trick.
Thanks, Dr. Jagdish. So we have another 11 minutes with Dr. Jagdish. If you have questions, you can just post on the chat or on the Q&A section. So we have another question. Thank you, sir, for your insightful presentation. This is from our V2. You mentioned about the use of LNA for therapeutics. I wanted to know that other modified nucleic acid such as PNA, they also can have used for therapeutic.
So all of them are being, as I mentioned, this is a widely researched area where, these are all essentially chemically modified or backbone modification. You will see, a number of research activities going on that I think all of them have potential to become therapeutic agents. The only thing is that, as I mentioned, I know I'm repeating, but delivery challenges, that remains the challenge. One of the shortcomings. So to answer your question, yes, they also have the potential.
Okay, thanks, sir. So next question is, what are the maximum scale you can handle in your synthesis? That's from Mr. Deepak.
Okay. This is actually sub-gram. You can see it in the presentation. What I'm mentioned is that 50 milligram or 60 milligram. That is it depends upon how many MERs as well. For a typical 20 MER or a 22 MER, I would say it is 40 to 60 milligram is the synthesizer what we are planning that can handle. So for the higher capacity, we may have to go for a different equipment, which eventually we have the plan to set up. At present, it is sub-gram or milligram scale.
All right, sir. So next question is from Bhati Mittal. Pre-clinically, there is a need to generate oligonucleotides and their respective targets. How you will overcome the problem of off targets? Yeah,
so see, if you look at the oligonucleotides, one of the advantages is very less off-target impact, unlike small molecules. So they are very specific because the mechanism of action is different, right? So compared to a small molecule, they have very less off-target impact. That's why people are exploring this as a breakthrough modality. So, what I can answer is that compared to other modality, this has got a very less off target. And eventually, if you ask me, there is no silver bullet for a particular disease or a particular conditions. So we need to, explore, or we need to do research across modalities, or a modality independent approach could be worthwhile, where the off-target toxicity or off-target impact can be one of the aspects, and across the available modalities, one of the things can be selected where oligo offers a particular advantage.
Thanks, Dr. Jagdish. So the next question is again from Mr. Deepak. Thanks a lot, Deepak Katilaji, for asking so many interesting questions. So the question is, what is your analytical capabilities on purification, isolation, quantification, assay method development, etc.?
Okay, so for the purification, it is it's a chromatographic purification. Typically, whether the ACTA or other purification technique. Essentially, it's a chromatographic setup. That's what we are also going to set it up. And for the identification or quantification, the LC MS. So whether it is an orbit trap or there are other LCMS models which can use for a detection of oligonucleotides, and the quantification again is by the HPLC. So essentially, as I mentioned, in the process sequence, we are setting up all these components. So we will be able to do the synthesis, purification, and finally to lyophilize and get the product out. Purification is a part of that, chromatographic purification, and hence the identification and the quantification as well. So chromatographic techniques.
Thanks, sir. So I'll move on quickly to the next question from Mr. Prem Kumar. Will you prepare phosphoramidites or will you buy from others for making oligos?
That's a fantastic question. Let me also tell you that there is a lot of stake, or there is a lot of importance for the modified phosphoramidites. So certain phosphoramidites we will be able to buy from the market from the suppliers, but certain phosphoramidites we will have to synthesize in-house. So it is going to be a combination of that. So there is where Origin is going to bring our small molecule synthesis expertise to the table to augment or support this space where we have scientists who can synthesize the phosphoramidites or nucleotides. So that synthesis expertise will be able to leverage for this. So to answer your questions, it will be a combination of both.
Thanks, sir. It's a good news that we are able to retain 98% of the audience today in this session. So I'll move on to the next question. How you look at challenges due to lower yields of these oligos during their synthesis and scalability?
Yes. So if you look at the synthesis, the lower yields can happen because of multiple reasons. Some of the reasons or major reasons are, one is the incomplete synthesis, or it could be that there is a problem with the cleavage or deprotection or over degradation during the synthesis. That results into a low crude purity, and eventually there are two issues then. One is the yield goes down. Second thing is, once you don't get a high purity at the crude stage, you are not going to get a high purity, because these are all oligomers with maybe 1 unit, 2 units less than the desired compound. So it's not going to be practically possible to purify that. So you can do the number of runs, but it's not going to happen. So for a higher yield, what one can do is that look at all the purity of the input material, the phosphoramidates, and pay a special attention to the moisture content, and look at what is happening exactly during the reaction. It's not the purification what can improve the yield. It is to increase the synthesis efficiency. Then once that goes up by understanding the purity levels of the input material and the moisture, but it takes time.
Thanks, sir. So I'll move to the next question, but before that, I'd like to share the results of feedback from the audience today.
Yeah.
So we have 94% people who think that it was a great experience for them, great learning experience for them, and 6% for them it's an average experience. There is no bad experience at all.
Thanks for this encouragement. Okay. This encourages me to further learn this topic, or my curiosity to learn this field up and running. Thanks for your support. This is really an encouragement for me.
Right, sir. So moving ahead, we have 3 more minutes to go. Yeah. I would appreciate the audience if they have any more questions, they can ask in next 2 minutes. So we got a question from Seema. As phosphoramidates are very sensitive to air, how do you purify when it's at a large scale?
Okay, so the large scale purification remains a challenge. So that's why you see there are not many manufacturers for phosphoramidate. There are, but then not everyone can synthesize and purify this. So it needs to be do it in a controlled environment. More than that, I would pay attention to conducting the experiments in a very controlled environment. So the purification of phosphoramidates, nevertheless, we need to do it in a controlled environment, but the synthesis part is more important.
All right. Okay, so we have a request from Mr. Prem Kumar. If possible, will you present one more session, especially focusing on synthetic part and designing? So is there a possibility, sir?
So the synthesis part, we may be able to do a little later. The design part, I don't think we will be able to do it, but the synthesis part, essentially going through the the process steps. How do we do the synthesis, purification? There are a lot of nitty-gritties associated with that. It's a very interesting space, but the technology is really complicated. So we'll be able to do a session probably a little later. Once we start synthesize, once we start our own synthesis, the plan is, we will be doing a couple of sequence by ourselves to publish the our understanding or our learnings. Probably that time we will be able to do another session. Thanks for your interest. That is really encouraging.
So thanks a lot, Mr. Prem Kumar. So in similar lines, we are launching a poll to ask you, in which area would you like the next webinar to be in? So it would be really appreciated if you can leave your poll there, so that we would have an understanding and we can arrange the next one accordingly. So most of it is discovery research, followed by commercial contract manufacturing, and then we had development and clinical trial manufacturing.
Okay. Interesting.
All right. So we are closing the poll now. Thanks a lot, Dr. Jagadish. Any closing words you have? Okay.
Thanks for joining me. And, I really value your time, and thanks for the encouraging feedback. Most of you felt it is valuable. I think then I'm really happy to know that, and thanks for joining. And I wish you a good day or good evening or good night, depends on whichever part of the world you are. Thanks for joining in me today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir.